Hi, everybody. David Noor back with my business partner, Jen Courts, for another episode of our Intelligent Growth Live. Hello, Jen.
Hi, Nor.
It is good to see you. And for our audience, we're excited to really talk about a topic that we don't believe is discussed as often. There's not as much clarity around this topic. And there's certainly a lot of interest in as organizations mature in their journey, and we believe it's a journey around this intelligent, profitable growth in developing revenue operations, RevOps, as an enabler of that. How should it be structured? Who should be on the team? And what should be the expected outcome or impact from this function? So, Jen, for our audience, describe what RevOps is and maybe a little slight delineation of what it should be.
Sure. So RevOps in its truest form is the strategic function of operations across all of your go-to-market functions. So that's combining your sales, marketing, and customer success operations teams into one and unifying both the processes that they develop, but then also the goals that they're being held accountable to and the technologies that all of those functions leverage.
And in your opinion, what's the state of maturity in terms of executives understanding RevOps and structuring it correctly, which then should lead to governing it appropriately?
I would say in today's market and in most companies, operations in general is not invested in enough, and it's not leveraged in a way that is strategic. It's more of a tactical execution focus type function, and it's not given the latitude to actually be a force factor in growth. And so a lot of organizations today are keeping their individual teams on those respective functions, sales, marketing, and customer success, and then just layering on another team called RevOps, which really doesn't help accelerate the business at all to drive growth in an intelligent way.
And you and I talked about this as the company, and we'll go into a little bit deeper for the audience. And by the way, we're live on Noor Group's Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube accounts and Twitter accounts, and encourage you to jump in with questions, comments, examples, anything you want to clarify. But Jen, you and I talked about as this function, or maybe the company grows, they initially have kind of very tactical admins, and then it becomes maybe a team, but still within that function, and never really seamless, never really kind of overarching, if you will.
Yeah, most organizations, I mean, when you get started, obviously, you're not going to have a very robust team. It's whoever has the most technical skill set on whatever startup group you have is probably going to end up being your admin or your person that does all the integrations. But as the company grows and scales, you do need to start adding positions strategically in those various functions beyond just the admin of the tool. They need to be looking at architecture and what technologies really should be in the stack and how is that data flowing from one to the other. If we add this technology over in customer success, what ripple effects does it have across the rest of the organization? If we take something out, like all of those things really should be thought of as the company grows and scales. And so by allowing the team to grow organically in a way that is strategic is really important, and making those investments back in operations, just like you would a sales function or marketing function or any other function within your go-to-market team. You really need to have a plan to add the appropriate headcount at the appropriate milestones as the company grows.
Beautiful. And again, we'll talk a lot more about that when we talk about governance and actually building team. For our audience, again, we're seeing increased interest in this idea of the subscription economy. Beyond the startups that Jen mentioned who start out as SaaS businesses, we've got mature companies and clients in mature industries who are looking to convert their traditional CapEx business models to one of OpEx? And how do we create a recurring revenue model? How do we create an approach where we remove friction or we remove steps in how people utilize or can prospective clients utilize the end result of our solution? So within that subscription economy, we believe intelligent and profitable growth matters more than ever before. As such, we've doubled down on this customer lifecycle journey, on this approach that says, how do we look at aligning, better aligning, more effectively aligning, more consistently aligning the way our customers buy with the way we sell? So Jen, give the audience an overview of this infinity loop.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why we chose the infinity loop is because it really does need to be a seamless and frictionless handoff between the different functions, and the 360-degree view of the customer or prospect really is important across marketing, sales, and customer success, because each of them will add tidbits or data as the person engages deeper with the company or has further conversations that will help inform other parts of their journey. And so the left side of this infinity loop is more focused on the marketing side. So it's the engagement and the awareness, and then bringing them into actually using the tool, so evaluation. And then that middle point is really where sales is engaged and is marrying the solution that the company sells with what the needs of the customer are. And so that's your sales process. And then that right side of the infinity loop is really your customer success. And so it's delivering on the promises made in the middle, and the value that was advertised on the left, and really creating that impact for the customer, and then helping them deepen the relationship and being a partner, not just a vendor.
One of our friends and colleagues and advisors, Eric McCarthy, at our last Relationship Economics Summit, asked a brilliant question: why did you name this the maturity model? We'll come back to that answer a little later on in this episode. So the reason we focus a lot on this life cycle journey is the notion that increasingly, the more executives we talk to, and PwC does their annual CEO survey, where they ask global CEOs, and we're seeing consistently a very legitimate concern to the threats to the top line. So if you think about where that top line growth is going to come from, whether existing relationships or net new ones, fundamentally it's about more intentionality, becoming more strategic in the relationships you choose to invest in. And all of our research points to relationships as a strategic enabler of that enterprise growth. And no one we know is investing in RevOps because they're bored or they have nothing else to do. So every facet of what we're talking about in this episode and in these series is really focused on RevOps as a strategic enterprise value creation engine, if you will. And because they have the entire, hopefully they should have the entire view of the organization. So that intelligent and profitable growth enables expansion, whether you're just launching or your path to an exit. It certainly enables integration and optimization, particularly for organic growth. We've got a number of clients that are enthralled in M&A activities at the moment, roll-ups. Those are all examples of where RevOps can become an incredible enabler. And then transformation, whether you're transforming your business model, your go-to-market strategy. We believe what RevOps can do, what RevOps often delivers, are actionable insights. Jen, comments on these three phases or three paths?
Well, I would just say that the operations, the maturity of your organization and how you leverage operations really is the same across all of these, because they do help you gain insights, and it helps uncover the levers that will help you move faster and be more agile as an organization, regardless of expansion, integration, or transformation.
So as we think about organizations and a big focus on this conversation, there's definitely a maturity model. And the maturity that we're seeing really cuts across at least these 6 areas. And again, we want you to think of a spectrum. So governance makes sense, not only a good solid foundation from the onset, but as you grow and as you scale, the team, the organization, your go-to-market approach. So is it, we believe different life stages of every organization requires different set of leadership skills. Are there exceptions? Sure. But a scrappy, resourceful seed round or a team of 3 people within a large enterprise takes that very much entrepreneurial. Everybody does everything. Let's do it by seat of our pants. We'll figure it out as we go. Mindset, skill set, roadmap. As you develop some critical mass, you need commercial leadership. You need proven leadership that brings processes, brings kind of proven, battle-tested practices. You need a much tighter architecture. Jen can speak to this in volumes. You need insights, actionable insight, not just the reports. We've had some heated conversations about the reports I can get out of Salesforce. That's great. So what? What can I go do with it? How can I improve the business? Do I really care where that lead comes from? Well, you better. And do I care how many touches will it take for them to answer? You better, because that's how you're going to find operational effectiveness in what works and what doesn't. Commercial asset management. What digital assets, what digital resources? We recently did a content audit for a client based on personas. And what Jen and her team found out was a whole lot of content they had wasn't being used, wasn't seen as valuable. So if you think of assets as digital, as relational in terms of your partnerships, those need to be elevated. Enablement, that's a huge one. And of course, operations. Jen, comment on these.
Well, to your point about different periods of growth of a company require different skill sets, that is absolutely true. And I think one of the things that operations lends itself really well to is when you are scrappy and you're starting to add process and function, they can take some of that day-to-day minutia, the repeatable things and the keystrokes, and automate some of that. And so it allows you to then focus on the things that provide greater impact. And so it's not putting up roadblocks. It's not creating a bunch of convoluted processes. It's really just streamlining what is being done in a way that then's trackable. You can find trends in it. To your point with the insights, you can then learn what is working, what is not working, maybe uncovering things that you didn't even know were working. There's a entry point that people are finding your content somewhere else, and it's really resonating with them. And so then you can incorporate that more into your marketing. And so across the whole spectrum of these 6 things, it's really important to always be fine-tuning what you're doing and why you're doing it, and really being intentional with all of that. And none of your systems, none of your processes are ever going to be set it and forget it. We've talked about this in previous episodes, and you and I have talked about it with clients, that it's really important to always kind of question and ask, why are we doing this? What can we do better? And it could be 1 or 2 tweaks. And so it's just all of these 6 come together to make a really cohesive package that the operations team would lead.
And as the business models evolve, things like customer experience, things like, again, frictionless experiences or self-serve experiences, all become elevating where the organization is, how the organization functions, where and how the organization goes to market. So again, this is a spectrum. This is a understanding where you are today. Much more importantly, looking at what has to happen for you to evolve as an organization moving forward. The other thing that we find fascinating is to really embrace the RevOps framework. So as Jen mentioned, a lot of organizations focus a great deal on their tech stack. So we have HubSpot, we have Salesforce, we just need somebody to kind of administrate those. Well, that's great. What kind of data strategy will they think of and execute? How about the analysis of the data and the reports? What about workflows and processes? Much more importantly, what's the strategic alignment between these different, often disparate parts of the organization? So if these 6 boxes aren't thought of, aren't discussed, aren't debated in a healthy, respectful way, you're going to get very transactional approaches to what and how to do RevOps, and not the first box, which is really a strategic approach. Jen, comment on these?
Well, I would say if you don't have healthy debate on these, and these 6 things aren't housed within a single team, you're going to create unnecessary friction just within the organization itself, because marketing and sales, while they both need to generate results, they'll usually be held accountable to different metrics, and they'll want the systems to do different things that may not be in alignment. And so, for example, Salesforce, marketing is needing Salesforce to do a certain process, but sales is needing it to do something else. And so you're either creating a whole bunch of custom fields to accommodate both of the teams, or you're creating unnecessary data entry or workflows that then marketing fields have to populate sales fields and back and forth. And so it just, without one team organizing this and one team sort of setting the strategic priorities and being held accountable to how these tools are being leveraged, you're going to start creating unnecessary friction or duplication of technologies, and it just becomes really cumbersome to manage.
And if you read the details, for those that are able to join us live and watch the video, if you read the details of each of these boxes, I mean, your RevOps strategy should be very much aligned with your go-to-market strategy. Processes, that's what creates a repeatable, predictable set of outcomes. So your customer lifecycle map is critical. The workflows, the handoffs. Jen often talks about the handoffs are the relay race, and how well one aspect of that customer interaction or the experience is passed on to another. Again, around that life cycle journey you can think of. Data. What data do we collect? What data do we share? What data should we and should we not collect? That's often in the news. And then the analysis, the reporting and metrics that are going to create alignment between somebody somewhere is going to ask, what the hell do these RevOps people do all day? And really being able to articulate that the insights, the actionable insights from the processes, from the workflow, from the tech stack, and of course the tech stack itself, the design of it, the integration of it, the usage and enablement of it. Again, Jen and I had an interesting conversation. I've been a sales rep, I've been a sales manager, I've been a VP of sales, I've been equivalent of a CRO and a CEO. And most sales professionals I know do not get excited about keystrokes. Let me just forget selling. Let me just get in here and do data entry work. Well, whenever you can remove that, you make it a lot easier. The more you make it simple, easy, fast. One of our colleagues, Jennifer Bridges, talks about this. Simple, easy, fast. Can you make it simple for me to understand, easy to internalize, and fast to act on? If you can do that, then I'm much more likely to embrace your processes, embrace the tools, embrace what and how you want me to do what you want me to do. So this RevOps framework is a really good, we believe, conversation starter on where should we focus, where should we strategically prioritize. And as Jen mentioned, this cannot be done in a silo, which then leaves us to a really interesting kind of next conversation. Siloed RevOps, I'll come to Jen in a second, versus really peer level governance. Comment on the last one?
Well, I would just say for those starting out on their RevOps journey and trying to transition from individual operations teams to a holistic grouped ops team, these 6 and there are various points underneath it can seem like a lot. It would behoove everybody to choose one and start with it. And while operations has always been looked at as very tactical, go solve the problem, execute this thing, it is very important to keep those people doing those functions because the business has to continue running. But choose one of these 6 and have the focus on that, develop that strategic charter, for example, and then move on to the next. And so you can start slowly shifting away from just doing the tactical to moving into more of the strategic, because you can't change this overnight. And most businesses, you can't move whole operations and teams and things like that and how you do things overnight. So it's really important to progressively take chunks of this and tackle it and before you move on.
And again, for those that can watch the session live, the siloed RevOps, which is typically what we see, is within, on the left-hand side of the screen, within marketing, sales, and customer success, there tends to be ops people, tools people, analysis people, data people. And Jen, I think you're of the opinion and you're of the belief that if a VP of RevOps role is created and is seen as a peer to the functional roles, then in fact, operations, enablement, insight, tools really can fit nicely underneath that structure.
Yeah, I definitely agree that having operations live outside of the various functions, it serves the business in a way that having it siloed in each function will never achieve. And what I mean by that is, like, IT needs to service the entire organization, and it needs to be done universally. Operations, the team and those technologies and the tools, it's not marketing tools, sales tools, customer success tools. All of those tools are interconnected. And so having a team that is also interconnected, managing that, setting the roadmap on what new technologies are we rolling out, new processes, training and enablement, having that being set by a single team that's outside of the functional goals really will set your company apart, because it allows the ops team to focus on what they do best versus being pulled in multiple directions to meet the various needs of just that one function that could create conflicts unnecessarily with the other functions.
So how do you, is there a secret sauce to, and we talked about this last time, getting beyond us and them to we conversations, to we challenges and opportunities? So whose job is lead gen? Whose job is it to move prospects along that journey and close them and then make sure they're happy afterwards?
It really is everybody's job. Just like data integrity is really everybody's job. The lead gen process and the data collection and making sure that everything's kept up to date is everybody's responsibility, but whose primary focus it should be is wherever that lead is in its journey. So if they're early stage and they just are starting to engage with content and whatnot, it probably is going to be marketing's job. But as they continue to have conversations, like, that may be sales. And then if they've bought from us, it's definitely going to be customer success. But having those feedback loops built in across the entire journey of the person is really going to be helpful with customer success getting information back to marketing, or customer success making sure sales is in the loop, or even support. And so we talked about previously, how do you evolve from the siloed ops to a more strategic ops? And one of the things that I've seen work really well is having an ops team, moving everybody under one leader that understands the needs of those 3 functions and can strategically set a tone and set a roadmap for operations, but then having a business unit partner in those various functions that is handling the tactical day-to-day. And so it's kind of a twofold. You have an ops team that's focused on the strategy and moving forward, the business forward, and then also a tactical day-to-day person that is in alignment with where the company is going, but can handle those sort of day-to-day minutia execution type things.
underneath on the right-hand side, under VP of Ops, talk about each of those: operations, enablement, insight, and tools. Why are they critical to the overall success of RevOps?
Yeah, so operations in general, very rarely are you ever going to find an organization be successful, especially in their go-to-market function, if all of the processes and capabilities are managed within IT. IT is not focused. The people who go into IT professions are not usually focused on the administration of the tools. They are worried about security of infrastructure and email and product type security. They're not necessarily wanting to know how Salesforce works or what a sales process is. And so that operations function is really important. And it's really the core of what RevOps does. Training and enablement, implementing new tools and processes and changing the way the business is done is great, but it means nothing if people aren't actually doing it. And so training and enablement is really important, as well as documentation. And so it's that continual asking questions, making sure people are following the process. If there's something that's becoming a roadblock or friction, figuring out why, and then modifying it. The third one, insights, is really important because just generating a report is great, but what does that report mean? A lot of executives don't know the questions to ask, and the operations team has an enormous amount of data and insight that they can help the business move and help those executives make data-driven decisions without having to just go with their gut feeling or have their version of the report. So it creates that 360-degree view that everybody can trust and everybody can work towards and from. And then the last one, the tools, like I said, customer success, marketing, and sales, they're all working in the same ecosystem of technologies. Some of the technologies may be more geared or focused in those various functions, but they all have to be connected together if you're going to have a holistic view of that customer and know and be able to anticipate what that customer is wanting and what that person's engaging with. And so having a strategic roadmap for the tools, not only will it help reduce the amount of duplication within your stack, but it'll also allow you to set priorities on what things are we adding, what key functionalities is the business needing to move forward and to accelerate and to remain competitive. And you can do that in sort of a product roadmap way. And so you're not trying to do everything at once, and you can have a progressive plan, if you will, to the technologies that you're growing and expanding within your stack.
So one aspect of one question that often comes up is the right-hand side of the chart. What should be above this? And I'll jump in with my perspective, and then Jen, I'll welcome yours. So in many organizations, titles are like undergarments. We just gotta keep changing them, and we keep coming up with new ones, and everybody wants one, and it loses its meaning. It's that 15th vice president of the local bank branch who really isn't really doing that level of the job. But if you look at the right-hand side, one way to think about these vice presidents who are responsible for functional areas is reporting up to a chief revenue officer, chief growth officer, because that's in essence what we're talking about is really the growth strategy. The other way that we've seen it is, let's say these functional roles are now C-suite. So there's a CMO, chief revenue officer, chief customer officer. And now there should be someone, we believe, at that peer level that leads operations, potentially reporting up to a CEO or COO or a business unit leader. The key is the right-hand side of the title of this, peer level governance. As Jen mentioned, we believe taking RevOps out of the functional areas and giving them both the accountability, but also the authority to see the entire playing field, leverage operations, enablement, insight, and tools across those revenue enabling, revenue creation opportunities and functions becomes critical. Jen, what should be, do you believe, on the right-hand side above those VPs?
Well, to your point, peer level leadership is really important, because to make RevOps work most effectively, having them be part of the conversation and the planning of budgets, of strategic goals, of metrics that we're being held accountable to, KPIs, et cetera, like having them be part of that conversation can then help them know and plan what is necessary from a process or a training or even a hiring aspect. So I would say, I mean, if you're going to have all of these roll up to a respective C-suite executive, there does need to be somebody in the operations role that is not necessarily a CRO, CMO. Like RevOps really does need to stand on its own. And I mean, on LinkedIn, to your point, titles are evolving and changing. I'm seeing chief revenue officers titles actually being changed to chief commercial officers, because it's really the commercial and the business side that they're focused on. And like CMOs are now being changed to chief growth officers. Operating officers, they kind of actually operate the business. So a chief operating officer is not necessarily the right title, but a chief revenue operations officer may be a correct title. I've seen that in a few places. But I think the most critical part of all of this is just that peer level leadership. And so it's not 3 departments have a C-level executive and then you have a VP of something, and putting RevOps under like a CFO doesn't quite make sense either, because what's really important is whoever's leading that function understands not only what that function needs to deliver, but also how to then lead the team that then is executing that work. And so making sure that whoever's leading it and having those strategic conversations can effectively then communicate down to their team and across on what their team is expected to contribute.
One of the conversations you and I have had is the need for very seasoned, very mature sales, particularly, but also marketing and customer success executives to really understand what RevOps is capable of. What have you found to be the best way to educate up? How have you engaged them? How have you helped them understand? And you and I have several friends that are in that role, right? They started selling 30, 40 years ago. You know, we all cold called, and RevOps wasn't a thing. Your leads was on a piece of paper, and we dialed, for dollars. And, so we came up old school kind of selling, just the plethora of tools and the insights and the fact that my intent before I do it makes it a very different environment. So how have you found educating and really leveling up what these executives understand about RevOps to be particularly impactful?
That one can be pretty tricky, and it does depend on the leader of those various functions. So the CRO, CMO, are they willing to learn and understand something new? Are they willing to try something different? So it's really that innovative leader that is going to want to embrace RevOps and what it can actually contribute. Past experience, the best way to educate up is really to ask really good questions and understand the outcome that they're looking for, and then being given the latitude and freedom to then develop the solution that then produces said outcome, and then explain kind of why. They don't need the nth degree of detail, but helping them see the outcome and the impact of said outcome is really the critical part. How it gets done, as long as it's seamless and frictionless and it's not adding a whole bunch of cumbersome process, the executive really isn't going to care. And so what I found is that asking for what they're wanting to achieve and then producing that is really the best way to help them see the value of RevOps, and by being proactive. And so generating the report that they've asked for, but then pulling out details of this is what this tells us, and this is why. Or here's the report you asked for. Here's something else that we found while we were generating that report that can also be helpful in your conversation. So it's really diving a little bit deeper and being proactive in what you're generating.
And it also sounds like very consultative, because they may know what they want, but not really what they need.
Correct.
I want this report. Well, report is just output. The real outcome comes from, as you said, the insights from that report. The real impact is what actions we choose to take from those insights to really create a material change in the business. So I think what I'm hearing is a certain amount of consultative approach from RevOps is also incredibly useful of, okay, John, you want that report. Tell me why. Tell me what are you after? Tell me what's the end result or the outcome and impact you're after, and let's figure out if there's a better or different way to get there. Is that fair?
That is fair. And one of the things you and I have talked about before with executives is they don't always know what they don't know. And so making sure you're asking questions that they actually can give you an answer to is really important, because you as an operations person will know more about the technologies and what it can do and what it can't do than they ever will. And they won't ever care either. But so asking the questions that they can give you insights to, and then producing something and checking in. So to your point, being consultative is understanding where they're wanting to go and what they want the outcome to be, and then creating something and say, okay, I heard you say X. I've developed Y. Is this what you're looking for? And then have them ask questions and dig a little deeper, and then go make tweaks to maybe get closer to the outcome, because you're not necessarily going to get it on first try.
Moving on to, so now that we've talked about governance and where it should fit, now I'm really curious on who should be on the team. Talk about who should be on the RevOps team.
Yeah. So as we talked about earlier in this episode and previous episodes, ops teams will evolve as the company evolves. So early on, you're going to need just admins of tools and people who understand how to integrate these things most effectively together. As the company grows and scales, you're going to need people who can specialize in certain areas. So somebody who really likes maybe the integration side of things or the process side of things, somebody who can execute on campaigns, another person that is going to want to dig through the data and do the reports and create the dashboards and really dig in to understand what is happening and why it's happening. So to become that analysis person, and then somebody else who's going to be doing the training and enablement. So really across those four functions is where you need to have depth within your team, because one person can't wear all of those hats at the same time. And if you don't have somebody focused on those key areas, then you're going to have gaps within your ops. And especially on the training and enablement side, gaps then means people go do their own thing and kind of Wild West, which is never what you want happening, because then it can lead to disparate data. It can lead to all sorts of things. And so one of the things in the slide that you're looking at, Trey.io wrote a blog about the careers that can be found within a RevOps team. And so these are just ones that they focused on, which was platform, which is really the architecture and the integrations that I mentioned. And then campaigns, it's around responsiveness, speed to lead, how the marketing campaigns are actually executed. And then marketing intelligence, that's obviously your an analyst type role. And then your development ops, that's people who do your web design, your emails, just sort of that day-to-day stuff that needs to happen in the background that helps move the operations team forward.
I'm going to go back to this slide that we presented earlier. I'd really like those four buckets of operations, enablement, insight, and tools. It really breaks across those functional areas, I believe, the needs of the executives in each of those functions and what they're held to account. Because without the processes and workflows, it's chaos and mayhem. Without enablement, you're right. I'm not going to get adoption. I'm not going to get the team to really leverage the infrastructure that we build. Without insights, we're kidding ourselves. We're confusing busy work with outcomes. And then the tools themselves are evolving at such an accelerated pace that becomes kind of really difficult to keep up with. So I jokingly said somebody somewhere is asking, what does RevOps really do, and how much value do they really add? And talk about, metrics. So in terms of enterprise value creation, we've got some of the key metrics on this slide. Talk about, why they're critical, why they're important, and maybe reference, give us examples of a few of these.
Sure. So for those who can see the slide, we're just looking at some of the core metrics that most sales and marketing organizations use. And what we've talked about in previous episodes and mentioned on this call is that you really need a 360-degree view of your customer. And you need a unified set of dashboards and metrics that all of your executive team is actually using and referencing, because we've been in client meetings before and everybody brings their own version of a report and nobody really trusts any of the data. And so that really doesn't lend itself to a we type conversation. It's a more of a us and a them, like sales is closing XYZ, but marketing hasn't really contributed anything. That doesn't lend itself well to intelligent growth within the organization or even being strategic in your go-to-market function. So the unified set of data, North Star metrics, if you will, are really critical across the organization to get people to trust them, to buy into them, to reference them. And so leveraging things like pipeline velocity and forecast accuracy are really important on the sales side. Win rates are really great. But one of the things we talked about in a previous episode is that you also have to look at your lost deals. So why did you win? But also, why did you lose? And how can we change that? And then feed that information back into marketing to maybe develop new materials that need to be part of the process. Customer acquisition cost is one that most everybody is focused on now, because all budgets, people are being asked to do more with less. And so deepening a relationship with an existing customer is far easier than acquiring a new one, and it costs less. And so focusing on the user experience and deepening that relationship and having conversations with them more than once a year when it's contract renewal time will help those people see the value that your company provides, as well as you being a partner in their success, not just a vendor providing some sort of solution to them. That customer acquisition cost also then lends itself really well to the customer churn, which customer success should be focused on as well. Because again, keeping customers that you have should be far easier than trying to acquire new ones. And you rarely want to have just the tire kickers, the price negotiators, because those are the ones that are not going to stick around for long. But focusing on fewer and deeper relationships is really going to help grow the business in a way that sort of smooths out those ebbs and flows in the sales cycle.
So let's, you and I play yin and yang in terms of, I'm going to just pick a few of these, and I want to know, beyond the obvious, give us a nugget out of a couple of them. So win rate, what's a really insightful nugget that I should get out of win rate?
Well, looking at the win rate, that tells you, when you dig into it, it tells you sort of what's working from a marketing perspective and why, and that what you're talking about and how you're talking about your product is resonating with the customers.
So the right message to the right ICP, or even within ICP, that persona is resonating, and that's they're picking up what you're laying down, and they're coming along in their buying with the way you sell.
Correct.
Okay. So move on to churn. I know of a customer right now that the churn is just not improving. What's a nugget that I should extract out of customer churn?
So customer churn, one of the first things that my team looks at when we see a high churn rate is what is being promised? What's the product that you're selling? What is it that the person bought? And then how are you onboarding that person? How are you helping them see the value in the product that they bought? Do you just roll it out to them and it's self-service and you just leave them alone? Are you checking in with them frequently? Is it a cumbersome process for them to integrate it into their own solution? So really looking at how you onboard new customers is something that can come out of churn. And then also, how frequently are they in your solution? So if you're a SaaS-based company or a SaaS-based solution, it's how often are they signing into your platform? Like how frequently are they using your reports? Those sort of things are something that could contribute to a churn metric.
Pipeline velocity. Why would I care how fast deals go through?
That matters because you need to work backwards. So if you're trying to hit a certain revenue number and you know that a marketing campaign, for example, or a field event takes 90 days for the first deal to actually hit an early stage opportunity, you know, anything you do this quarter is not actually going to affect pipeline until next quarter. And so it allows you to know more accurately your revenues that should be expected and the deals that should be worked. And then it also helps you determine what sort of marketing and campaigns you need to be running and where are you actually going to start seeing those efforts get traction.
One nugget, one insight out of customer. My last one, cost of customer acquisition.
That one, you need to not only look at the cost that it takes to get that customer, but then how does that translate into future sales? And so outsourced BDRing or SDRing, whatever, appointment setting, if you will, could cost $100 per lead. But does that lead then actually lead to additional opportunities, upsells, cross-sells? If it does, then that high level of expense is really something that you should continue doing because it generates quite a bit downstream. Some of the less expensive options from a marketing perspective could generate a ton of leads, but they don't actually ever go anywhere. They are your ICP, but they are not people who are ready to buy now. And so you're just contributing to the noise. So balancing both of those is really important from a customer acquisition cost perspective.
And again, for our audience, that's the reason these 8, 10 metrics are, we believe, really impactful ways to identify gaps in the organization, identify silos, data silos, process silos, personality silos. A company that will go unnamed, Jen and I met with approaching almost 2 years ago. And RevOps is shoved under VP of Finance, who on a call tells us, yep, we got that. We're already doing that. We're in good shape. Thank you. And 2 years later, you see reports from this organization and it screams they're not doing it. They don't, candidly, I'm not sure they understand it or they have the depth to really extract what's possible, from that function. So the reason we want to do this episode is because that's just one example we've seen where RevOps is structurally in the wrong part of the organization, where either fiefdom or ego kicks in. We'll already do that. We don't need your help. Thank you. And more importantly, executives don't understand what's possible, the impact that could come from RevOps when it's done right towards really intelligent and profitable growth. So again, on that note, Jen and I are both out talking about, if you think about all that we've shared, it really is about relationships, both inside and external to the organization. So we're doing more speaking engagements and half-day, full-day sessions with clients. And for those of you that may know, we have the strategy visualization practice that really brings strategic initiatives to life, all the way through coaching and development and even M&A integration. Within RevOps, Jen, you want to highlight 2-3 things that your practice focuses on?
Yeah. So one of the first things that we do is just a really quick x-ray. A lot of organizations are so focused on the tactical, they don't necessarily have the time to dig into audit what has been, and they just kind of continue digitally duct taping things together. So both the x-ray and the assessment, one is a very quick and dirty 1-week evaluation of your tech stack, and it highlights just 5 critical areas that an organization can improve upon. The assessment is much deeper. It's a 30 to 45 day deep dive where we develop system architectures for your organization and kind of evaluate and set a roadmap for you. One of the other things that we do is that M&A integration with the organizations and the consolidation of industry and companies, managing multiple systems and making sure all of that data is kept is really important to the growth. And so making sure that those are done well and the consolidation is handled appropriately is really important. It's interesting work. Also, my team really loves doing the managed service side of things, where we can help set the foundation for the operations function within an organization and really manage the entire tech stack from end to end and be that department that does your technology, your roadmap, your training and enablement as the company grows and scales, either supplemental to your internal team or just actually be your entire ops team.
Earlier, I mentioned Eric McCarthy, who had asked us the customer lifecycle journey is as a maturity model. And his specific question was, well, how are you, why do you call it a maturity model? Well, what we figured out was within that infinity loop, there are 10 very unique steps. And we call that our amplified time to impact process, where the team can parachute in anywhere along this journey based on the initial assessment, or we can take the client end to end. And the beautiful part about this is we've partnered with a firm called Versalytics to really build a RevOps scorecard. And imagine not only a grading system as a descriptive of kind of where you are, but much more importantly, a prescriptive approach on what do you need to do, what do you need to think about, what do you need to really elevate very differently. And that lends itself really nice to our BizOps practice, where similarly from an X-ray to analytics maturity, data visualization, data talent and capabilities, M&A integration, and data solutions, we're really being asked to bring the data to life and really bring it in a meaningful way. Jen, any comments on the different practice areas?
Well, I think all 3 of them complement each other really well. And one lends itself to another. And a lot of the M&A work is necessary to have both the strategy conversation and that data visualization, as well as that visualization of just your story. That can also help set your technology or RevOps roadmap and communicate it very clearly. So the various practice areas within Nor Group complement each other really well. And we just collectively share insights about clients as well.
So we hope this has been useful to you on RevOps, governance, on really building the team and really looking for impact out of revenue operations. We've got several great episodes coming up next week. This is always Tuesdays at noon Eastern. We're going to cover generative AI. You would have lived in under a rock or in a cave if you haven't heard of what AI is doing in multitude of industries. We're going to stay very focused on marketing and sales and really customer success and give you some very practical ideas on examples that we're seeing out there, but also where you can start. We're seeing a lot of organizations struggle in where do we start? And yeah, I know about ChatGPT, but what can we do with that? And how can we start implementing that increasingly and really enriching our relationships with our current and prospective customers? After next week, we have a guest. We're starting to invite guests to these episodes, and we're going to talk about creating a culture of coaching within the marketing and sales and customer success. How do we coach greatness out of the existing talent, existing team, internal, external, to really show up and deliver at their best? So I hope you'll join us. Again, Jen Cords and I are very active in our private online community called the Nor Forum. If you just go to norgroup.com/forum, you can learn more. Our June newsletter is coming out, obviously, later this week. So hope if you're not a subscriber, norgroup.com, you can just subscribe to our newsletter. But these are built for you. These are created for you. and we hope you'll continue to come back and benefit from them. On behalf of Jen Kors, my partner, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on our Intelligent Growth Live Tuesdays at noon Eastern. Thanks, everybody. All the best. Bye-bye.